Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our briefing on the draft 2023 budget and grid management charges. My name is Brenda Corona, here with the Stakeholder Affairs Group at the California ISO. I'm also here joined by a lot of our panelists here today from the ISO, starting off with April Gordon, our Director in Financial Planning and Procurement, Ryan Seguizia, for VP for Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for Finance, and Jody Sinathis, our VP for Human Resources as well. And then along with other folks that you'll see on the panelist group, who we will introduce if they are asked to contribute to this presentation. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few meeting reminders on the next slide that this call is being recorded for informational purposes only, and please make sure to utilize the raise hand icon above your chat window for us to know that you have a question to ask. And also, if you do have connection with us through audio only, please use #2 and dial to meeting so we can call on you also. If you have a question during the call, please be sure to state your name and affiliation before making a comment, and also send any chat questions directly to myself or Yelena for any, or all panelists as well, so we can definitely address those. And also just a reminder that we have this meeting posted and presentation posted on the website for the budget for 2023, and it's under reoccurring meetings. So if you can't find that, we will be sending that link through chat so you can see that presentation that is posted along with the document for the 2023 briefing. And then now we just want to thank you all for engaging with us. On the next slide, I wanted to go over the GMC stakeholder process, and we want to thank for those who have joined us in previous discussions in regards to the preliminary draft revenue requirement. We have a timeline that we are approaching, and for today's call, we will be going over that. After today's discussion, we'll be moving forward with presenting the final draft revenue requirement to the board in December. And after that, we will be posting the 2023 rates, and those will be effective as of January 1st, 2023. So there's a great timeline here. And now I'll go ahead and introduce Ryan for a few words on the next slide.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I'm going to cover this highlight slide because it's a great summary of at least the material items impacting the budget, and then I'll turn it over to April to kind of walk you through at least a summary of the details, and we can drill down as much as you need. We're going to see a revenue increase or revenue requirement increase next year of $17 million, going back to the $199 million level. This is something that I discussed in July. We kind of forecasted this was going to happen due to really inflation pressures and some additional headcount that we were going to be adding. I say back to the $190 million level. Just a few years ago, we were kind of hovering in the $197, $198 million revenue requirement level, and then we saw this in the last 2 or 3 years, this dip into the 180s. Just because our other revenue was growing much faster than our costs, especially with the launch of RC services and continued growth in the WEIM market. We kind of dipped down into the $180 million level, but we knew we'd be back, and so we were up to $199 million next year. Where is that cost coming from? Well, it's the O&M budget, the operations and maintenance budget, is going to increase by about $27 million. That's a 13% jump from this year. It is obviously inflation pressures are impacting the budget. There's some inflation pressures impacting the non-labor costs, and April kind of walk you through that. But really, nothing moves the needle more so than the labor costs, and we are experiencing the greatest wage inflation that we've ever experienced, at least in the ISO's existence, in that category. We are also adding 50 new positions. That's on top of the 25 positions added in this year's budget. There is a very detailed letter that has been penned by our President and CEO, Elliot Mainzer, at the start of the budget book that goes into great detail on why and where those positions are being deployed. I will just say that, as the ISO's business has scaled over the last 10 to 15 years, with, major initiatives completed in terms of market design and new markets, new revenue sources, the workflow and responsibilities has grown, substantially faster than the number of bodies on the ground. And so it's led to some issues and some cracks that we're trying to resolve at this point. So anyway, take a look at that letter. Again, it has a lot more detail than we'll go into today on the call, but explains really where those positions are being deployed to deal with those strain points. We were able to offset some of that $27 million increase in the O&M budget with the other components of the revenue requirement, and April will kind of show you that. But essentially, it's just some continued growth in the other revenue categories, a smaller collection of capital. We'll use some of the capital reserves next year to fund projects, and another sizable return of funds through the operating reserve credit, which is the annual true-up of budget to actual revenues and expenses. Still seeing some sizable return from really the COVID years where we were severely under budget. So that comes back as a credit in this next year's revenue requirement. So with that, I'll turn it over to April, and she can walk you through the details.
Great, thank you, Ryan. That was a really good summary. Hi, folks. Happy Wednesday. I'll be taking you through the rest of the presentation. For the GMC revenue requirement, as Ryan mentioned, we are seeing a $17 million increase over 2022. The largest driver of this is operations and maintenance budget at $237.3 million. This represents a $26.6 million increase, and that's primarily due to the salaries and benefits costs. Our debt service is going to remain flat at $14.7 million. Our cash-funded capital is going to see an $8 million increase. Cash-funded capital is going to see an $8 million reduction from 2022, and I'll go more into that further in the presentation. Our other costs and revenues are going to see a $3.8 million increase, whereas our operating cost reserve adjustment is going to see a $2.2 million reduction. All told, our revenue requirement is going to be $199.6 million. And for our transmission volume estimate, we are projecting a slight increase. With this increase, that would give us a pro forma bundled cost per megawatt hour of 85 cents per megawatt hour, and that's a 7 cents increase over 2022's. Next slide, please. Our O&M budget is comprised of 6 main categories. Salaries and benefits is our largest component of that. This is where we hold our assets. These are our employees' costs, and this portion of the O&M budget represents close to 77% of the total O&M budget. Here we're seeing impacts of the 50 new positions, the merit equity adjustments going into next year. We're seeing a slight reduction in benefit burden, which will help the budget. But all told, we're looking at a $23.6 million increase in salaries and benefits going into 2023. Our next big driver for the increase is going to be in telecom and maintenance costs. Here we're seeing an increase in cybersecurity, InfoSec costs, as well as adjustments for the additional staff that we'll be bringing on. And then the next, the largest category is going to be outsourced contracts and professional fees. Here, we're also going to see some increase driven by additional employees through subscription for software, as well as some additional InfoSec costs. All told, our O&M budget is going to increase by $26.6 million, and that'll put us at $237.3 million for our budget. Next slide, please. The next component of our revenue requirement is our debt service. And as I mentioned, we will be holding flat at $14.7 million going into next year. That $14.7 million is broken down between our debt payments due to bondholders, as well as a $3 million collection for our required reserve. Now, this 14.7 will be level set going into February of 2039, which would be the end date of the debt. However, we do have the opportunity to refinance February 2031 if we choose to do so at that time. As of right now, the outstanding principal on that debt is $165.4 million. Next slide, please. Now, our cash funded capital. This year, we will be pulling from our reserve to help cover the project budget that we'll be setting going into next year. The cash funded capital portion for 2023's revenue requirement is going to be set at $22 million. The project budget for operational technical enhancements as well as some other projects will be set at $25 million. That $3 million delta will be pulled from our capital reserves to fund the projects. The list of projects that we have right now are included in the budget book. We'll provide an updated list when we post the draft final version of the budget later in December. The focus areas on the cash or on the projects include market, a little bit too soon there, Brenda. Thank you. The project focus areas for these projects will be in market and operational excellence, enhanced technology foundation, focus on customer and other costs, as well as grid evolution and readiness and regional innovation opportunities. Next slide, please. Thanks. Our other costs and revenues are going to increase by $3.8 million. The RC funding requirement is going to go up by $1.7 million, and that funding requirement grows and decreases along with the growth or a reduction of the revenue requirement. And as our revenue requirement is increasing, the RC funding requirement is going to increase as well. The funding requirement for next year is going to be $19.7 million. Now, with the Western Energy Imbalance Market administrative charges, we are projecting an increase of $1.2 million. And that really has to do with the 3 new participants that we'll be seeing coming in next year, which are Avon Grid, El Paso Electric, and Wapa Desert Southwest region. We are seeing an increase in our forecasting fees, and we are projecting that will continue going into 2023. So we are projecting an increase of about $500,000 to $5.5 million for this intermittent resource forecasting fees. All told, our other costs and revenues is going to help reduce the budget or revenue requirement by $57.5 million. Next slide, please. Our operating cost reserve adjustment going into 2023 is $16.9 million. And as Ryan mentioned, the operating cost reserve adjustment really is a true-up of prior years' operational efficiencies, over collections of GMC. That goes back to our stakeholders in the form of an $18 million credit for 2023. We're also going to see $2.9 million for the debt service collection. That's going to be offset by a 15% reserve for our OMM budget of $4 million, which lands us at a $16.9 million offset to the revenue requirement for operating cost reserve adjustment in 2023. Next slide, please. With the increase in the revenue requirement and a decrease in some of the volumes, all of the rates going into 2023 will see a slight increase over 2022's rates. And then all of the other rates and fees will remain the same that are not listed on this slide. Next slide, please. Now, a little bit of where we've been and where we're going. As a reminder, we kicked off the stakeholder meeting in July of this year. We went through our internal budgeting process between July and October. We posted a draft version of the budget October 25th, and then we presented that draft to our Board of Governors on the 27th for their review and consideration. Between now and December, we will go ahead and finalize any internal budgeting modifications we need to make, and we will be presenting the final draft of that budget to the Board of Governors on December 14th. Barring any rejection of it, we will post the final version of the 2023 budget, as well as the resulting rates on December 21st. And with that, I open it up for any questions.
Go back one slide. So for those who are on the phone line, just to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand icon or send us through chat. And Sharon, my event producer, are there anyone on the phone line to ask a question? Oops, we do see one person.
Yes, caller, your line will be unmuted. Please go ahead. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Eden, your line's unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I think I'm having mic issues. Oh, you can. Okay, yes. Great. Thank you. This is Eden Foray on behalf of Modesto Irrigation District in City of Santa Clara. I had two quick questions. One, beyond the few items included in that budgeting document, does the ISO budget include any expenses or investments regarding the extended day-ahead market? And then also, if anyone could provide just a little bit more information about why the ISO is filling those 50 positions now, beyond any information provided in that document. Thank you.
Hi, Eden. Yes, I can go ahead and help with this question. In regards to the extended day ahead market, I'll go ahead and ask that Ken Kasparian address that if there are any project holds for that effort. But before then, I'll go ahead and address your headcount question. But before I do, are you asking as to why we're filling them now, or where the positions are?
More to the question of now. I know that document walks through where those positions will be filled.
Okay. We are filling some of those positions now because we have the reserves to go, not the reserves, but the budget availability to cover some of those if we can get them onboarded sooner rather than later to address those pinch points that we've mentioned through the budget book. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Ken, are you on the line to answer the EDAM question?
Yes, I'm here. Can I get a quick sound check?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yes, we have put capital dollar forecast aside for both our day ahead and our EDAM initiative in 2023.
Ken, we heard you.
Thank you.
We are getting some background noise, so let's go ahead and unmute those who are not speaking. Thank you so much. For the question, Eden, I hope that was a great response for you. Next, we have Matt LaCar. Your line's unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Matt LaCar with PG&E. So I have a forward-looking question about once EDAM is established at Go Live, will there be, I guess, in the next cost breakdown, an attempt to segregate the administrative costs of EDAM from the WEIM, as they will have likely different footprints and different participation? And should we expect to see a separate administrative charge for the EDAM market? Thanks.
Okay. Hi, Matt. Thanks for the question. When we actually move forward with EDAM and start building in those administrative charges into the revenue requirement, you will see that broken out in the revenue requirement. As it's proposed right now, the EDAM market services rate will be the same as the general GMC market services rate. The EDAM system operations fee will be the one that you'll be able to identify separately from the GMC. Does that answer your question?
But will EDAM and EIM have separate administrative charges, bearing in mind there will still be EIM only participants separate from EDAM?
Yes, those will be two separate charges.
Okay,
And you'll
thank
be
you. Yep.
Good question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the phone line? My event producer, do we have any?
There are no further questions in the queue at this time.
Thank you. So for those on the call, this is your last chance to raise your hand to ask a question. On the next slide, we will go over our commenting period that we just opened up for this specific document. Yelena, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So for the comments, they'll be due on November 11th, and feel free to go ahead and follow this link to the stakeholder budget and grid management charge process under the recurring stakeholder processes. We will send that link right now on chat in case you don't see it on the slides, but if there's no more questions, we will go ahead and close the call. Is that confirming with April and Ryan and Jody? We can go ahead and close this call for this meeting.
Yes, that
Wonderful.
works, Brenda.
Thank you all, and I appreciate everyone's participation. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next call. Thank you.